Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Connections. Today I'm very thrilled to be joined by Natalja Sticco. Hi, Natalia, how are you doing today?
Hi, Natasha. Thanks for having me. I'm doing wonderful. What about you?
I'm doing good here, and you look so lovely outside. Looks like you're enjoying the fresh air.
Yeah, that's true. It was very warm in the morning, but now it's getting a little bit windy, so I have my blanket. Hopefully, it
Comfy.
will stay with me throughout the whole episode if it gets too cold.
And your tea, are you a tea drinker or a coffee drinker?
Actually, I'm a tea drinker, but I didn't want to get late, so I have a coffee machine, and I like
Okay.
just quickly grab the coffee. So because if I had to put the kettle on, it was like extra like couple of minutes, which I didn't want to. I didn't want to wait. I want to just be on time. So yeah, this time it's coffee. But I'm a tea drinker. I normally have only a cup of coffee a day, and that's it.
That's good. I don't know, it gives me a headache coffee, so I don't really do any coffee, but a lot of tea as well. So I feel
Yeah, you feel me, yeah, but whenever you're on schedule, sometimes you just
you
grab
gotta
it.
grab what you gotta grab.
Right, exactly. You just go with the flow,
Yeah.
whatever you can get at short notice. Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming on and chatting. Um, I wanted to ask you about when you first started learning music, or was it maybe at home? Your family was musical? How did that begin for you?
My family is definitely musical. So my dad, he was playing guitar. He had a good voice. My mom also has a good voice, but neither of them were professional musicians. So it was more of a pastime for
Hmm.
them. And when it came to deciding my future, probably they figured out that it would be great to have somebody finally doing it professionally. But
Mm.
when I was a kid, nobody could come up with an idea that it might eventually be a profession. So back then, it was maybe a tradition if a girl is born, so a piano is being bought. And the worst was, so we lived like, I mean, nowadays it's called a studio. Back in the days, it was called like one room apartment. So I had my piano in the kitchen. I remember, and this was, like that's what it's a very impressive, right? Because nowadays you have all those options, right? Like, but back in the days you just went with what you could get. So yeah, that was like my introduction. And my parents, they actually worked very hard and they had to get into debts just to get me a piano because we didn't
Wow.
have a piano. So yeah, I started originally as a pianist. So since I was 5, I played the piano. Probably I sang before, and yes, I did. But yes, if you ask about education in general, yes. So first it was a music school where I learned to play the piano, learned solfeggio, learned how to read music, learned about musical theory and musical literature, so about composers. I also learned about Latvian culture a lot, so how the Latvian songs and like how this culture developed into some more serious music, like that Latvia is very famous of nowadays. And when we think about singing, to my mind, before you reach a certain age, and obviously it's puberty period, right, when you pass
Yeah.
it, before that you can't really think of it in terms of I was seriously trained, I was immersed in that or something. No, of course you sang for fun. I participated in choirs, right? I had solfeggio lessons where we were taught to read music, to sing multiple. So there back then, being a nature old, I learned what's like a soprano line, alto line, and
Yeah.
like, but back then, we like everybody was kids, so we weren't everybody were kids. So obviously we didn't have like the
Yeah.
bass line and the tenor line. This was like no, 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 just like make sure you read like this like soprano alto, right? And with boys it's the same thing, like like it's a boy soprano, boy alto, right? And yeah, so graduate finished the music school when I was 14. And there was an option to take also the choir class. It's
Mm.
called choir conducting and like choir, and it was like an extra year. And then I had my lessons first lessons as a singer, so at the age of 14. Because still I hear that very much, and that's what some of the teachers who work with kids, they don't tell you, that they can't really set your voice. Yeah, they said, like the proper set and everything, and how to work with breath, that starts when you are like, you passed your puberty, right? Before
Yeah.
that, yes, as I always say, the most important being a kid's teacher of singing or something is just to really not to make the kids lose interest. So to
Mm.
make it interactive, to introduce the kids to various music so they like it, and to literally make them like it. That's all. That's the whole trick, yeah. Because otherwise, yeah, all the fun starts very, very much later. You, as a kid, you still don't know all that probably. So yes, so when I was 14, that's all started. So that I had my first teacher. He was a man. He is a choir singer himself. and he also teaches music, and I loved it a lot because we tried different music out. And if somebody now tells me, oh, back in the days you were singing Rachmaninoff vocals, yes, it happened. Yes, it did. And it's like considered to be a very difficult piece, but we managed it. But that's what I'm saying. We were having fun. He explained me the basics of breath, right? And we did good music with him. So I'm really very grateful to him for all this basics which he input as a voice teacher for me. And then for a good while, so I was just taking private lessons from other teachers back in my hometown. And uh, when I had to make a decision whether I should continue my studies, so I either had to go to a college. So back in my home country, it's a bit different than in the US. So normally, if you graduate middle school, if you want to pursue a career in music, you go to a so-called college. But here
Mm,
it's really high school.
yeah.
So instead of 3 years of no, here high school is 4 years, right? There it's like also 4 years of music high school, but it's like from 10th grade up to like 12th and then 1 year extra. So it's works like that. And then people go to a musical academy, which here, it's equal to Juilliard or to something like that. Yeah. So and that's what people do. So they quit their high school normal and they just, go and immerse themselves in music. So I didn't do that. So I went to the tryouts for the musical high school and they liked me and said yes. But there was one teacher there who said, like, can you do anything else? I was like, what? She's like, am I that bad? No, she's like, I don't know. She probably was honest or something. And she said that, like, I just don't want like you're too young. I was 14, 15, obviously, right? It's like I don't want you to get immersed. You're just too young. So if you can do
Mm.
something else while you're like more mature, that's what just an advice she gave, and I was pretty much happy she did it. Because yeah, I mean, I instead of going to a musical high school, I went to a normal high school, regular high school, and like took extra math classes, physics, and was very much immersed in science. And eventually, when I was graduating high school, yeah, and when I had to choose whether I go to the musical academy, I was still taking private lessons during all this time, right? Or I go to a technical university, so I went in for technical university
Oh,
eventually.
wow. Okay.
Yeah, and yeah, so but always, I mean, I never quit it, right? It's like I had private lessons, I did some choirs, right? I did the church choir all the time. I did the uh how it's called, like school choirs, right? So I was always I did master classes, right? So there were like professors like from other countries coming and giving master class. You didn't have to be a student of the academy, you could just participate, and that's what I did.
Oh,
So
that's
I
wonderful.
yeah, and it was great. So it wasn't, you didn't have to belong to a conservatory to do something like that. That was like, my lifesaver. And yeah, so when I did my bachelor's in IT, so I worked in the office for a while. So I started as a software developer. So and then how old were I? I was probably 21, right? So when I was 21, then I told my mom, who was also impacting my decision why it was a technical university, 18. I said, no, now I want to try what I really want to do for living. And tried. So I tried and I was like, okay, I don't get in the academy. Okay, then probably I'll go to my master degree in IT. But no, I got accepted. And that's probably where it all began, like on a serious level. So,
Wow. So you
mm,
had your bachelor's, you're saying like 18, the equivalent, you did
yeah,
IT, and
correct.
then wow, that's awesome though that you had that foundation and then you went on to music. So when you went on to the academy, had your voice already like you were already a mezzo soprano, or were you unsure at that point?
That's why I'm telling you, I'm very grateful to this teacher in college who actually said just give it more time, right? Give
Hmm.
just take its course, right? Because as a 14-year-old, I was considered to be a full lyric soprano, lyric
Okay. Yeah.
coloratura. I mean, I had like I think it's like 4F, right? Well, Queen of the Night. Yeah, there is a high F there, so that's
Yep.
I could do it. That's why, and with the course of time, my voice just got more mature, right? And like at the time that I was entering the music academy, right, I was like a dark mezzo, or at least they thought I'm a dark mezzo,
Yeah, yeah.
because right nowadays I'm working with another teacher who tries to combine it all together and saying, you literally are a dramatic soprano, because as a
Oh,
kid,
wow.
yeah. So right, that's what I'm telling you, just give it time. And don't rush, especially with kids. If the kid wants to sing, of course, give an opportunity, but never push like the training, because
Mm.
you need the body to be mature enough to really get into condition of, okay, now I get it, now I can start finally understanding where it is and everything, because as a kid you don't feel it, you just do it and intuitively.
Yeah.
Like, but and this is the problem of this profession, right? Because we don't hear ourselves, and we don't hear ourselves as literally our voice, our coaches hear us.
Yeah.
And that's why when I'm asked whether you need a voice coach, I was like, yes, because you don't hear yourself. You don't. And there are some pianists who are trying also to work as a voice coaches. And I'm personally, if a person was never introduced to opera singing or singing by themselves, I don't believe it's going to work.
Mm.
Because again, pianists, they hear the end result, they don't feel it themselves how it's done. For pianists, they still, it's another skill set that we have, right? For us,
Yeah.
it's a little bit of, I would say, fitness plus with mind control. And like when you get like this together, and then it's automatic, then you can get music adding, then you can add like acting and everything. It's quite of like super challenging if you want to do it
Oh yeah.
properly. And you want to sing until like, so not like 5 years and you're a game over. No. So if you want to sing until 80, that's actually how they used to be in the past. They, if you look at all those great singers in the past, yes, of course they had a certain career, but if you listen that at 80 and 75, you could still hear that the person
Mm.
has the
I
singing.
know it's so interesting. So, I had someone local here at my local church, and she was a dramatic soprano. She was like much older, but you
Yeah.
can just hear the power. It stays
Mhm.
all those later years. And I like that you said that too, because I kind of went on a similar experience where I was like the high little soprano, and then kind of a mezzo lyric, and then now they don't really know what I am. So,
That's it. That's the trick. And that's why, your voice is impacted by very much factors. It's hormones, it's food you eat, it's like even the country you live at, right?
yeah,
You can go to Italy and there it just sounds naturally because the climate is super favorable, right? I mean, now I'm talking just about female voices.
yeah, yeah,
Instead, you see, you just confirmed it yourself that it can change with time, right? It can have more color. Then you have a kid and it changes again, becomes, it can go higher, it can go lower, but there is this aspect of it's never the same. So that's why you need school. That's why
yeah.
you need techniques, so you know how to manage all that. Because you will have bad days, and you will
Oh
have
yeah,
sore days and you must sing. And this is where you must have a stable school. And that's why we are properly trained, and we're trained that's why you require that much time to actually be trained.
mm,
So you are not trained, to sing like in a healthy condition, right? We're not trained like when you're happy. No, that's why you go to school to be able to sing whenever.
yep,
And when it comes to men, it's even more difficult, right? So for example, for dramatic tenors, right? Their time, their like period is coming way after 30, for example, right? And that's why for a dramatic tenor, they even advise to start as a baritone, not a lyric tenor. So for a dramatic soprano, it's a big different. You can either start as a lyric soprano or a mezzo,
yeah.
and then like combine. But for a tenor, they never actually, unless you're a full lyric tenor, for a dramatic tenor, all, often they start as a baritone because they just don't know how to, they don't have it by nature. They don't
Yeah.
have this range. They just need to figure it out. And, it's not something which is given to you like with a snap of fingers. No, it's something you like work hard for.
Yeah, especially those bigger voices, like you're saying, it really takes time. I think someone, if true, like coloratures, it might come a little earlier in their life, in their 20s, they're doing operas. But I would say in when you were in Latvia, you were doing a lot of operas, though. So tell us a
Yeah.
little bit about the operas you were involved with, some of your favorite ones to be part of.
So I was a member of opera choir, and I also was a participant of Young Artist Program. So I tried myself both as a choir member and a soloist. So as an opera choir member, I sang alto, and that's what probably saved my high range now. That's why I
Yeah.
always say, because if I sang soprano one, or soprano two is a bit like easier, but soprano one is literally the people who just get like the worst normally because they have to work, while altos are like, even if you take like Verdi Requiem, like there are like periods when like altos, they just stand on one note and everything, and poor sopranos have to go like all the ranges, like we're like that's so that's why probably what saved my voice, because I know people there who are high sopranos and who did choir for all their lives. And it's quite challenging, right, to keep the school,
Yeah.
like, and it's quite challenging to keep the voice like as good as it was when you joined the choir, right? So, right. So, I mean, I sang 32 operas together, I think, as a choir member. And the most challenging was when you join a choir, you are literally giving 5 or 6 operas you have to learn like in two in two
Wow.
weeks. So yeah, yeah, the most famous ones. Just like, I mean, I can probably, we can remember all 32. I just wanted to like just highlight my first one. I learned in like I think a week. It was
Wow.
the masked ball. Yes, was and like for choir it was like very challenging because we still had to go to the conductor and we still had to sing it by heart. And if you didn't like how you sing it, so you had to come once more and sing it again. So imagine. And you couldn't do, I mean, when I joined, like you had to do it as a solo. Back afterwards he changed it so you could do a quartetto, so you
Okay.
didn't have to be on there. But for me it was just like a school of life. you know because honestly, if you ask me nowadays what's easier, to sing a concert or this thing like, with the conductor, this like test, as I would say a concert, because there it's like, and he's like, oh, okay, I didn't hear this word like right now, like I didn't hear it right. Can you repeat once more? Can you repeat once more? And yeah, so it was such a hard, I mean, it was good, yet like made me, I mean, it was discipline, so you knew
Oh yeah.
you to do it. And also I was lucky because some of the operas I had to learn, I had an additional motivation to learn because, for example, for Carmen, which is actually a huge opera for choir in terms of this French text, and if you're not a native speaker, it's quite challenging, let me say.
Yeah.
So this I learned in 3 days only because I was told if you do it and if you pass the test, we are taking you on a tour to Monte Carlo.
Oh wow.
So you know, and that's what I was telling. Oh, Monte Carlo, I can do whatever for that. Like Monte, yes, I'm doing it for free. Like, and we had our private jet. Not the small one, but like just for choir and orchestra to go there. And for Traviata, it was the same story. So for Traviata, it was a guest performance, and I was approached and said, and like by again the choir conductor, and like, oh no, okay, you want to go? You want to go to the guest performance? It was Belarusha back then. It's like, yes. It's like, okay, can you learn Traviata in 3 days? Like, yeah, of course, So that's how it happened. And of course, when you have this additional motivation, you can do everything. If I had to learn it like, on a regular basis, yes, it would probably take a month or something. But when you'll get something additional out of that, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna do it, whatever. And I also remember my son, he was uh, he was a toddler back then, so he was 2 3 years old. So I remember we used to sit outside and I had to learn Macbeth because Macbeth, my motivation was like guest performance in Spain, so we lived there for a month.
Oh wow. Yeah,
And
nice.
yeah, so I remember having my headphones and like making sure my kid doesn't like doesn't fall and like hurt himself because I had to learn Macbeth. It was like, yeah, there I had 2 weeks, so I was like lucky. And yeah, so that was probably the most, how to say, yeah, the most famous like in terms of my impact, right? So when I understood I really can, and if I want I can make things happen, yeah, because it's all by heart, right? So I will say now, like with things I do now, often you can use scores, and for me it's like it's just such a relief, knowing you can do it like in another way. And now, like, yeah, I'm, whenever it's like, I was like, do you need it by heart? Like, no, no, no worries. You just can use the scores. Like, okay, God bless you.
Yeah,
So,
that's definitely a big change from having to learn it like that to have
yes,
the
really
score.
true. And the thing is, like, that's how you train your memory, right? And that's why for you it becomes, I mean, probably the most challenging to learn is Wagner. I never sang solo. Wagner, I did only choir. I did like other operas. I did also solos in that. Not in all of them, yeah, in just some. But Wagner was challenging because it's German, and it's like whenever I mean, I speak German a bit, but whenever you sing it, it's a bit different than when you speak, right? So it has this, sh,
Yeah.
and it's like, but these ones for me were like literally mind blowing. I tell you, I was thinking my head is gonna explode, and like, so it was the Flieging the Helen that I had to learn. I had to learn Rienzi and something else. Yeah, so there were like 3 or 4. Yeah, 1 second. Yeah, Lohengrin. and Tannhäuser. Yeah. And this is like, but again, the first is difficult, second is like less difficult. And on the fourth, you figure out how it's structured, right? And it's
Mm.
the same composer and you understand how to do it like shorter. So it's again, it's just practice. That's all. But yeah, for me, that was probably the most challenge. And again, I learned the flig and the hole and the choir part. Why? Because we had a guest performance in Oman that I wanted to go that bad. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna do it. Yeah. So I was just lucky, I had a very good motivation to do that.
And so you love traveling then. You also had some special people that you've sang with or sang on stage with, like Alina Garancha and Juan Diego Flores, which are some of the biggest opera stars.
Kaufman, right? Kaufman. Yeah. Diego Flagos never sung together. Yeah. Kaufman, Jonas.
Oh, Kaufman. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I got the wrong name.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
what was that like performing with them?
It was very interesting because when you stand on the same scene, same stage, right? You actually get to a point that you just can't believe it, you know what I mean? It's like really, so I saw this person on TV so many times on YouTube and everything, and now you're just standing near, and especially with Kaufman, right? He's just so down to earth based on what I have experienced myself. So he was super nice, and he was like, in his jeans and like, t-shirt, like very down to earth person and super normal and super, like easygoing to work with. And that's why when people ask about overall the diva, and like I mean, I've never experienced that. I mean,
Mm.
there are some singers, of course, who do that, and I don't just want to throw names, but no, there's a huge bunch of people who just like it, who love their job, and who come do their job and are actually nice to the colleagues. And for me, of course, I could learn from them, I could see, but for me it was amazing that really, they're like they're normal people, and they just, they're not divas or something, they just want to come, do their job, sing, and make us happy. That's all.
So after, you had this wonderful career doing operas, you actually came to the United States. So there was a bit of a reinvention period there too, right? Where you started going more towards classical crossover. So tell us a little bit about that
Uh,
experience.
yeah, that's correct, because USA in general, opera stage or opera scene, it has a little bit of different system than Europe, right? So in Europe, right, so if you are a choir member, right, or you're a soloist, very often you will do it full time. So if you are, for example, in Germany, there are like 80 or something theaters, right? Every theater has its own choirs, and they have their own soloists, often who are like on a regular paycheck, right?
Mhm.
As you probably know, it's very different. And
Yeah.
the only full-time theater is the Met. So, and and the probability to get on the Met, I'm a mathematician, so I calculate always, what's the probability and everything. And plus, it's New York City. I mean, I'm based in Boston, not something, I would like to change my life completely. So that's why I just wanted to continue singing, and I had to figure it out how to do it in another way. So not a
Mm.
full-time choir or soloist, right? So how to do it so I still sing what I want, and I still can make a living out of that, and find my audience, right? So that's why how I actually, when I was still waiting for my working permit and green card, so I was singing at a Catholic church, for example. And this was again, I know music. I mean, I know how to read scores, and how it happened. I showed up like 30 minutes before the mass. They just explained me. Then I think also what I started understanding how to do. They have this old Gregorian writing of notes. This I also figured out how to read eventually. So yeah, I mean, I worked with a fantastic organist. Am I did I pronounce it correctly? Right, so it's Michael Olbush. And yeah, so, and that's what probably struck me and understand, I can do a Catholic mass, now I can do everything. So the second probably important moment, right? I mean, I tried myself on jazz, and this was also just um a challenge, because like when you do a Catholic mass and then like you go and do jazz, like people will not probably understand you. But then I started reading about Jesse Norman and all those
Yeah.
like singers of color. That's actually how they started. They sang in a church, the majority of them. And like if you read about Renee Fleming, she started as a jazz singer. So that's how yeah, that's why I figured out, like if you have again the school, like this technique, yeah, you can just adapt it like for something else and make it work. So yeah, so I tried myself on jazz. So the BK Davis, he's a great pianist. So he's a Steiner international artist. He actually also wrote a single. I can't say he dedicated to me. No, he just wanted somebody to sing with him together, and he wanted like it in Russian back in the day. So yeah, so that's why we always chat with him, like all those jokes, like yeah, like like Moscow jazz band or something. So yeah, so I did. I mean it, and it was nice because when it's opera, I'm always controlling that. I'm always like thinking or whatever. Like, but in jazz, you don't do it. You just go and have fun. You just belt it out. You can use your chest voice as much as I want. Like while in opera, my teacher is like very strict about
Yeah.
chest voice. And yeah, and like with the why how I ended up in crossover, also doing some pieces, like especially Time to Say Goodbye. This is probably the most right, like the most famous one, right?
Oh yeah.
uh because I figured out like if I could do clean, like a Catholic mass and like a jazz, I need to try crossover, right? And when I was a kid, I listened to Sarah Brightman a lot, and probably it all started with Sarah Brightman and Bocelli, not like Kaufman, Elena Garancha, So those were people who impacted my taste overall. And then I started looking into singers. Yeah, so crossover was probably the beginning,
Mm.
you know, just trying crossover and pop. I always tell that, right? And Requiem for a Soldier, that's the first, I think, single, I really recorded in terms of classical crossover. Yeah, that was just like I had I just used my normal voice. I didn't have to adapt it, right? To do crossover. And yeah, it was very comfortable in terms of range. And I figured out, if you have this basics as a singer, right, you can adapt it always.
Mm.
Maybe musical theater is for me still a bit challenging because it's more of like work with text. Like, I'm like still classically trained. So, I'm like very cautious about vowels, right? So the vowel
Yeah.
has to be in the right place, like, oh, you need to open it properly, oh, here, you just drop, don't drop. You probably know this. I think, yeah, with musical theater, it's still a bit different. It's microphone, it's a certain style, which I never mastered. So I always, when I'm asked about musical theater, I say, no, there are singers who are specifically trained for that. So
Mm.
it's still a bit, and plus it's English. And English overall, it's like I know there is Menotti, there is Samuel Barber who composed in English, but for me, it's not the same as if you sing in Italian.
Yeah.
For me, still, if it's opera, it's still in Italian because their vowels are bright, they are very comfortable, and you can really, you can make it autopilot. With English, it's still, musical theater is probably a better genre for English, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And when we talk about crossover, yeah, I mean, still, so I literally sing it like in my Italian style, but applying English to that. And because it's not that high normally, it's quite of a comfortable range. I can make it work.
Yeah,
So,
no, I think that's a good thing about crossovers, kind of wherever your background is from, you can make it work for you, you know? With
right.
like something you mentioned, Requiem for a Dream. The first person I think I heard sing that was Katherine Jenkins, so she's also a mezzo. It kind of
Yeah.
fits in that range. But you've taken, so you released this single, and given everything that's happening with Ukraine, you actually decided to give the proceeds of that now to, those efforts. So tell us a little bit about what that means for you and why that piece specifically.
First of all, I'm married to a US Air Force veteran. So my stepson is currently in Slovakia. So he's
Mm.
a army captain, I think. He got the captain recently. So he's working in the embassy in Slovakia, helping with the refugees. My both grandparents, they participated in World War II and they were killed. So my grandmothers, they raised their children on their own and never got actually remarried. And me myself, I have friends both in Ukraine, in Russia, and families, and it's devastating. And my son actually, he wants to join Air Force, so he's like dreaming of becoming a firefighter pilot himself. So he's like obsessed with that. Like, and actually, yeah. So also, my from my son's family. So there, his grandfather, he was, I think, a commander like in the USSR military back then. So it's like it's super like it's all connected.
Mm.
And now knowing the fact that both Ukraine and Russia, right, together they with the US and Britain, they were fighting together, during
Yeah.
World War II. That's where the alias, right? And now, like, and like Russia is like attacking the people who literally fought like on their side, and like creating all this like weird excuses why they are doing that. Of course, it's heartbreaking. And of course, I still want to help as much as I can. And like, especially the people who protect their motherland,
Mm.
and for Ukrainians, they actually got their country like in 1917 or 18, right? Like and for them, it's like having something, that's just, and somebody like steps on that or whatever. Of course, and it's somebody, who you fought together.
Yeah.
And yeah, of course, I also feel bad for Russian soldiers who are like young kids and they're like 18, 19 who get killed, and they go like fight and they don't know for what. Because for me, all this motivation, which Russia gives and feeds all the world, for me, it's like I don't understand why those kids have to die,
Yeah.
right? To get killed and everything. So yeah, what Requiem for a Soldier does, I just try to help out their families. So as organization TAPS, it's an organization which supports military families all over the world, and especially families of the fallen soldiers,
Mm.
making sure the widow and the kids are receiving enough support. So yeah, so I'm supporting the families. So all the proceedings go to TAPS, and that's just my impact to the families who lost a soldier during this war in Ukraine,
Yeah.
or uh, have an active soldier now in the military of Ukraine.
That's beautiful. I love that piece. And actually, that whole album is wonderful. So you have a lot of big music on there, Verdi music.
Yeah,
Um, so tell us a little bit about your song selection. Also, you have the Gomez Ave Maria, which I love.
that's why I always say I just really enjoy good music, and I don't care whether it's opera, crossover, or jazz. So this every song is probably dedicated to a certain event I had in life,
Mm,
and in the majority of, whenever I sing it, there are reflections which come along with that. So in this particular case, it was probably collected so that I can tell my story. So story of like the periods I was experiencing. So for example, if you take Re de la Bis, so from the masked ball aria, this is like, this is a little bit of a witch in me. Even though I super no, I mean I'm a super calm person, but this is like, the black side which I never, experienced in life, but this is something I want to uh talk about, and I want something expressed with music, right?
yeah, yeah,
Oh yeah, if we take Cherubino, that's like a little bit of this, puberty period when you still go out and you see all those people, all those, like of course it's a guy, but I sing like it as a girl, like, like having butterflies in my stomach. What is it, love or whatever? What else? Yeah, Maria Ave Maria Gomez is just a dedication again to all people who
mm,
passed. So for me, it's like this song reminds me of my dad who passed right before COVID. Uh, so yeah, I mean, every single song, it reminds me of a certain event which probably made me who I am. That's why it's called Natalia, this album. So just my story told like in terms of different music and different periods even, right?
yeah.
So it's yeah.
And then so you've also done a few singles like No Time to Die.
Mhm.
So do you plan to do another full album soon or?
I mean, let's see, let's give it a shot. Now we are busy with the Vincero project, right? So probably this one will be the project which will take all the time and all the efforts, at least for the summer. So no other album,
Not right now.
for the upcoming 3 months. So yeah, so this is something which is also very close to me because it's an Italian show. So my husband, he is Italian American, and my current voice coach is from Italy. And overall, for me, it's a tribute to Italian culture overall,
Mm,
because to my mind, this is how it's all started. And actually, Italian opera is the basics for all other genres, like
yeah.
musical theater, like uh, what else can I say? Yeah, like even pop, right? So the basics was like, this was like this is how it's all began. And to my mind, just telling the story and showing how much we appreciate Italian culture, and like also judging by how much they suffered during COVID. They were actually the first one who were hit like majorly after China,
Yeah.
and they were like on the complete lockdown and everything. And for me, it's just doing the best I can to again remind us where it all began from. I mean, of course, it's not only music they are famous for, it's also their excellent artists and fine arts and everything, yeah. And
Food.
also architecture, food, yes. But to my mind, right, it's just, and even we tried to make the program resemble, not resemble, probably the wrong word. So we made the program filled with all those hits that people know 100%, or of course they don't know the name, but they heard it on TV,
Yeah,
they
yeah.
heard it like in commercials. So that's just like a reminder to the people. So it's just not a commercial, it's something, which was born in Italy, and it was born, yeah, back in the days, and still alive and still relevant, because, you can hear it in commercial nowadays.
And does the show did you have like write out a story for it, or is it more like a concert format? What's the
Mhm.
story of Vincere Opera?
So among us, I'm just a singer there. But yes, of course, like the arias I sing are probably something which are also my number one choice if I had to make a solo concert. But it's my husband who is the mind behind all
Okay.
that. So he planned it as if we are telling the story again. We want to make it an experience for audience so they can immerse themselves into this process of a transformation,
Mhm.
starting from a happy mood, like in in a party, like, to all this like hard dramatic, like italian Italian arias, which really, make people, lose their mind.
Yeah.
With all the spectrum of the emotions that like the opera heroes are experiencing on stage, and like by way how these arias are combined together, right? Even if you take, for example, the tenor, right? So a tenor, like, so he sings La Donna Immobile, like this flirty song, flirty aria in the beginning, and he ends up with Cavaradossi aria, who is gonna be executed soon,
Yeah.
right? So, and that's why we just want to bring our audience on our journey to feel the same emotions as we are feeling singing these arias,
Mm.
and make sure they are not bored. And whenever I always say opera is not boring, it just has to be done properly. So it's organized as a concert. We are not making a full production, so it's a 45-minute series of arias. So for Hollywood, we're having three people. So there will be me, there will be another soprano, Diana Silo from Latvia, and a tenor from Spain, Herman. Uh, Herman Padre. I need to learn his last. I mean, he has a slogan.
It's okay.
Herman Torres. This is like I always. I mean, this is like a new challenge, for me. I always forget. I was like, so yeah. So we just want people to enjoy the music and to experience all these emotions, which come together by listening to good singers and to good music. And that's all. That's why opera is not boring. It's just I always say opera is not boring. You just never heard a proper opera.
Mm.
That's all. And right, because we don't have capacity for full production, we're just taking the singles, the hits, and telling the story with the help of them.
I think that's great though, because even as you're saying, just trying to get people more exposed to opera, if it's
Right.
kind of more in that scenes format, they kind of can enjoy it and then be ready next time to sit for a longer production. Yeah.
Exactly. That's very good point you made. Yeah. That's, like I wanted to summarize and you did it perfectly,
Okay.
right? But that's what I figured out, like I can't, for example, when a person like asks me, oh, what production should I see? You know? And of course I will say Carmen Traviat or Turandot, right? But still, from Turandot, what do people know from Turandot? Nessun Dorma. That's it.
Yeah.
Unless you are like very much into classical music, you don't know anything else, right? And that's why, like, with this short, right, with this short, relevantly short shows, right, our goal is just to have more fans, because, right, like, that's how people get interest, right?
Yeah.
So that's how a child gets interest, he listens to somebody singing or playing an instrument and says, oh, I want to try it myself. exactly the same as with this with the opera, and hopefully, we'll just have more people who will love it eventually, who will love Italian culture. That's how we can eventually preserve that.
Yeah, absolutely. So you have your first show, I think it's end of June, June 26th or something like
I
that?
think it was 15. No, 18th. 18th.
18th.
18th. Yeah. So it's Hollywood. I don't remember the venue again. So I'm telling you, I
We'll
always
put it on the screen. We're good.
yeah. I
It's
mean,
okay.
it's actually my first time in California. So
Is it
that would be
really?
fun. Yeah, I
Nice.
never been to California. Yeah.
So do some sightseeing too while you're there as well.
I will. I need
After
like
the
I need
show.
to make a picture, at the cell, how it's called, Alley of Stars. Or no. Maybe I just don't know how it's in English. So when like the
Oh,
celebrities they
the
have
hands.
stars.
Yes, yes. Is
Yeah,
that,
yeah, yeah.
I think maybe the Chinese theater, maybe it is? I'm not sure.
Yes, yes, I think so too. Yeah, and of course the sign, so I mean, like, I should make a selfie.
Of course, you got to get the Hollywood sign selfie.
Yes,
So that's your immediate priority that's coming up is Vincero Opera. We'll obviously put it up on the screen so people can see where to find those tickets. Um,
definitely.
when you're not performing, Natalia, what do you like to do for fun? Do you still do IT or
When people ask me what is like, what do you do during your free time? And I say honestly, I watch TV series and sleep, but it happens. Right. No, I mean, I work as a technical writer in IT industry. I used to be a software developer, but I wasn't a fan of that, so I just wanted to do something which is really, and for me, all this, like it's some kind of another sphere which I have in my life. It helps me not to lose my mind when I just do singing, honestly. I always say it's my safe mode, when because with singers, it's a never-ending story, and it's a process. And with singing, it's very difficult to expect immediate results. And even
yes.
if you are a well-established singer, it doesn't come one day. So I'm always telling, my IT career, it's something which helps me just to switch my mind to something else, so I don't get immersed too much in opera. And there are some people who say, "Oh, you're not dedicating yourself 100%," and everything. It's like I tried, I almost lost my mind. No, now I'm living like how I want it to be. Yeah, because I noticed, like especially opera singers, they're super vulnerable. They're impacted by many factors, as I say, health. Like even traveling and everything.
Yeah.
So I just need some kind of an escape to make sure I'm on the right way. And also, what I noticed with singing, it's not how much you sing, it's how correctly you sing.
Yeah.
And it's very often beneficial just to have this turn off for a while and do something else. And that's why I know people who do cooking, who do something else just to turn away their mind. Because when I worked in the opera full time, yeah, I mean, I sometimes couldn't even fall asleep because I had all these melodies, running from my brain, especially, if you learn something, you have like rehearsals every day of the one of the same thing. Yeah. So yeah, so for me, still it's my safe mode.
It's that
Both financially,
balance.
yes, it's a balance. It's both financially and mentally.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's important. I mean, ideally, of course, we all dream of having these perfect careers where we can, but it doesn't happen like that. And I think I mean, I work a different
Right.
marketing job on the side too, so I totally
Exactly.
understand. We gotta
I know,
balance
like,
it.
yeah, I know some friends who teach. They find their inspiration in teaching. I was never into that, so was like, a no way for me. But yeah, I mean, just find. That's why, whenever people ask me an advice, I'm like, that's what I say. Like, just find something which can help you to turn off your thinking too much about singing. So if you have that, you're all set. But it's my recipe. Maybe there are people who think, no, you should be emerged, and that's how you make it. Yes, their life, their path. Everybody, thank God, is different.
Absolutely. Thankfully, because
Yeah.
otherwise I do like to see the different journeys we all take because otherwise you'd be quite discouraged. You see some and it just seems like it goes from 0 to 100, and other of us, I think most people it takes a longer time to build. But yeah, so it's definitely good to hear different perspectives of how
Yes,
you
and
make
even
this dream
telling
work.
you, there will be people who tell, "Oh, she's wrong. She's not dedicated. She has to be a starving artist to merge into that." I've been there for 7 years, done that. No thanks.
Yeah.
Didn't end well. Didn't end well with like with a great career and everything. No. So
Yeah,
I don't know. I think it's still very, very individual.
I agree. Well, thank you so much, Natalia, for
Very well.
chatting. It's
I
so
was
much
like, I
fun.
would just do a cheers, but yeah.
It's been good getting to know you more. And again, we'll have all the information up for Vincero Opera. So I hope everyone enjoys the show and good luck.
Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure. And thank you for having me. And thank you for inviting me. It was a
Absolutely.
great,
Come back next time you have another album. We'll chat again.
sounds good. Thank you so much, Natasha. Appreciate it.